This is Guns and Ammo's Buzz podcast, and here we are going to talk about the new semi-automatic Mossberg 990 Aftershock. And this, of course, follows the Mossberg pump-action Shockwave that we saw, and rightfully so, the 990 Aftershock semi-automatic, so the fun is on tap. Jim Tarr reviewed it for the October 2025 issue of Guns and Ammo magazine, where it appeared shockingly awesome on the cover of our magazine. And we have Rich Kirk and Jack Oller. Jack Oller is the managing editor of Guns and Ammo magazine. I'm the editor-in-chief. Jim Tarr is your handgunning editor. And Rich, would you please state your name and title at Mossberg?
So Rich Kirk, like Eric, you just said. So I'm the senior director of marketing here at Mossberg.
Excellent. And that just doesn't mean you're full of advertising. Rich, you're a longtime friend. You've been in the industry. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to Mossberg?
Oh my God. So it's funny. I mean, this is a story I've told 100 times. So I was working for a $6 billion financial services company in New York City for a while, and lived in New York with my lovely wife, and I was, I went in to propose my marketing plan for that upcoming year, and my boss, who was the president of the company, he said, why don't you just kind of do what you did last year? We're showing a 30% growth year over year. I guess your goal for this year would just, keep your team from getting too drunk at the Christmas party this year. So I went back to my office and laid on the couch, and I looking out the window, over the New York City skyline, and I'm like, I need something else. So that was a moment that I just started answering calls from recruiters. And it's funny because it was probably maybe like 3 or 4 days after that, epiphany that I had to go someplace else. And by the way, it paid really, really, really well. And so I had took an interview and a job, and eventually taking a job at a large insurance company in Connecticut, where I'm from, where my wife's from, and that's where we're going to move. And she was very, very excited about it, getting back home. And then a day after I accepted that job offer, which was a big offer, I got a call from a recruiter, and he said, "Hey, so are you still looking?" And I said, actually, I just accepted a job. And he goes, "Oh, that's too bad." I said, "Well, tell me about what you have." And he goes, "Well, how do you feel about guns?" And I grew up. I grew up, shooting skeet, sporting clays, upland birds, stuff like that. And I said, "Oh, I like guns." He goes, "Oh, well, there's a gun company in Westchester County, New York, which is right outside New York City, and they're looking for a marketing guy." And I said, "Oh, is it Kimber?" And he goes, "All right, well, I can't tell you that. We need to set up the interview and all that stuff first." And I said, "You know what? Yes, I'll interview for this job." And I did it specifically because I owned a Kimber at the time. I did it specifically to maybe get a factory tour, see where my gun was made, just selfishly. Like I'm already going to Connecticut. I've already committed, and that's where I'm going. So I ended up going for this job interview, and the one thing, his name was Ralph Karanian, who was the chief operating officer at the time, who would turn out to be my boss later on. He said to me, "Look, we can't pay you close to what you're going to be getting at this insurance company. But wouldn't you want to not have to minimize your screen when someone walks in your office, when you're on a gun forum or something like that, during your lunch break, like all day?" And I said, maybe. He goes, "And you can bring your dog to work." And I was like, "Oh, all right. Well, let me go home and talk to my wife." So I go home and I walk in the house or the apartment, and I'm wearing a suit, and she goes, "Oh, I thought we were done interviewing. Do you have another meeting up there?" And I said, so I went to this gun company called Kimber that is looking for a marketing guy, and she goes, Kimber, is that stupid silver gun you have? And I said, yes, yes, it is. And they offered me a job, and they can't pay nearly as much, but I can bring Lou, my dog at the time, I can bring him to the office, and I don't know. And she said, God bless her. She said, look, if it means that you're not going to be going to the range every weekend, and we can spend more time together and all that, and you can bring Louie to the office, then go for it. See what happens. So that was about 14 or 15 years ago. And the funny thing is, I get to the office my first day of work, and I noticed there's no other dogs there. So I ended up saying to Ralph, I was like, Ralph, are you sure it's all right if I bring my dog here? Like, there's no other dogs. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, you can't bring your dog here. Like, no dogs are allowed here. And I was like, well, but you told me. He goes, well, I figured that would push you over the edge, and it'd be easier just to ask for forgiveness. So, yeah, no dog. But welcome. So, but the funniest thing about all that is, my wife was right. Not only do I not go to the range on the weekends anymore, but after dealing with guns every single day for years, I don't go to the range at all anymore, unless it's work related. Which, I mean, that's a lot. But my buddies at home, if they want to go out and shoot, they have to drag me out. So, but yeah, so I was at Kimber for 10 or nah, maybe 8 years maybe. And then I don't know if you guys know Dave Miles, who's now over at Barron, but Dave was the marketing guy here at Mossberg. And I was sitting in my office at Kimber. They had said, hey, we're going to move our operations down to Troy, Alabama. We would love for you to come with us. And I went down and saw Troy, Alabama, and I decided to not go, only because I'm a I live on the water here in Connecticut. I got a lot of friends. My kids are in school. It's so. But I was sitting in my office after they were trying to get me to move down to Troy, and I saw a press release on the shooting wire, and it said that Dave was moving over to Barron. So I called up Dave immediately, and I was like, "Yo, is this true?" And he said, "How do you know that?" And I was like, "It's in the shooting wire." He goes, "Okay, well, all right." Okay. Yes, that's true. I probably need to start making some phone calls and let people know that this was happening. But I said, all right, if you can just tell John, who's my boss now, tell him that I'm interested in coming to work for you guys. And it was like 2 weeks after that I was here, or maybe 3 weeks.
What was your attraction to Mossberg? What did you know about it before you got there?
So my first shotgun was a Remington 870 Wingmaster, which I still have. Which, I mean, it was an old one. I mean, it is buttery smooth, and it's had the crap kicked out of it. But what I knew about Mossberg, I mean, what didn't you know about Mossberg? If you're kind of in this space, they've been around for 100 years, um, and they are. I mean, at the time, I guess what? There's a lot I didn't know about Mossberg. I knew that they were the world's largest pump action shotgun manufacturer, or shotgun manufacturer. So I said, oh well, maybe that's a something I'd like to look at, and it's 25 minutes from my house. So, but then you get here and you realize there's just so much more. I mean, product wise, the line is huge. It's. I mean, I didn't know that sorry, I didn't know that Mossberg made rifles before I got here. Well, before I took the interview and did all the research on it, of course. But and to find out, you know, walking the door that they didn't just start making rifles; they've been making rifles for 30 years, and they sell a lot of them. So it's but yeah, I mean it's I did know of the people at Mossberg from just going to different shows and events, being in the bars, and you kind of know everybody in this industry. It's very small and incestuous, but they're all good people and fun people and like to laugh and have a good time, and they haven't gotten rid of me yet, so I guess I fit in here.
Good. Well, hey, thank you for joining us. And I tell you, I'm going to bring Jim Tarr into this in a little bit of a different way. Jim, I'm going to give you a quiz. His, uh, what was Mossberg's first handgun? You're the handgun editor.
If I remember correctly from when I wrote up the MC2, didn't they have one way back in the day, like back when they started? But I can't remember what it was called offhand. So I've failed already. But I can say that unlike Rich, my first shotgun was a Mossberg. So
All right. Well, hey, Jack, how about you? You want to take a stab at that one?
Well, it's obviously a very leading question. We all know the MC series that Mossberg has now, but I'm guessing, Eric, that you have some insider historic knowledge. And I see Rich back there digging in a gun safe. I wonder if he's going to be
Yeah, it's buried in there somewhere.
there somewhere. No, I don't know. But I'll also add that Mossberg was also my first shotgun growing up. So
Well, nice trying to weasel out of your way. No, it's the brownie. Yeah. Anybody feeling interested in edibles? No, the Mossberg brownie.
oh yeah. Okay.
One of the reasons I bring this up is Mossberg actually has made a variety of products through its history. And if you don't have it on your bookshelf already, let me recommend this book. This is Mossberg. It's More Gun for the Money. It's the history of O.F. Mossberg and Sons by Victor Haviland and Sherry Haviland. It's an excellent book. In there, you will find out that Mossberg has made everything from bicycles to all sorts of outdoor sports equipment. And one of my favorites actually came out in the 80s, and it's a bullpup 12 gauge shotgun. And that is an interesting fact. It's a Model 500 bullpup that he just reconfigured with the stock. It appeared in the 1984 catalog.
Yeah, it looks great in 1980s era films.
Yeah, like it ought to have a character of its own in Aliens.
Right. But Eric, one thing I'll say about the Brownie, which was it was the first gun that the company ever manufactured back in 1919. It was a four-shot pepperbox style, I guess Derringer style pistol. It was like a break action. So on our 100th anniversary, which was 2019, we were kind of trying to pulling together everything we could that just explained the history of Mossberg. And the one thing about the Mossbergs, I mean, we're still family owned. One thing about the Mossbergs is that they didn't really like to celebrate success or history. It was always like, hey, let's get on to the next project. So during that time when we were just like digging out stuff, a guy that right behind this wall here is our North Haven, Connecticut manufacturing facility. The guy that managed that plant came in my office with a box. He's like, "Hey, I don't know if you want this. I mean, it's just by happenstance, by the way. I don't know if you want this, but I found this, out in the factory." It's like, "Yeah, what is it?" Open it up, and it was the actual prototype. It was the first one. That is, it's now. It's. I mean, you'd think that we would have it in a display case out front. It's in the bottom of my cabinet here. Um, but yeah, I mean, just a piece of history. And you come to find out, talking to, you start talking about that product, and there were people that had it, grandfathers that had it. It was designed for trapping, for trappers to dispatch animals and traps. But then, when the Derringer kind of increased in popularity for personal protection, that became a viable option because it has four shots instead of two. But at the time, we sold them for $5.
Well, hey, the reason I mentioned specifically that bullpup is that it shouldn't really surprise anybody that Mossberg thinks outside of the box and likes to innovate and come up with clever ideas. In addition to some of the obviously practical guns that you make, uh, you know, not so long ago we had that pump action Shockwave, and it grew a lot of interest and even inspired an aftermarket product. The Crimson Trace came up with the laser for it to make it quite usable and functional.
truly one of the most popular products was the laser saddle. Pretty, I mean, obvious match to a short shotgun like the Aftershock, like the Shockwave. It just made sense for aiming because it is tricky to bring that up to your cheek. You don't get that traditional cheek weld. Laser sight makes a lot of sense for that.
So, and that brings us, of course, to the 990 Aftershock today. Now, we don't want to call it a shotgun. It's not a pistol. Rich, what is it?
Firearm. It's a firearm that shoots shotgun ammunition. No, so in order for it to be called a shotgun, as far as the the NFA is concerned, it has to be shot from the shoulder and shoot multiple projectiles, as in like shot, right? So when you so w- it has to be in order for it to be a firearm, it has to be over 26 inches in length, for total length from grip to muzzle, and it has to come from the factory designed to shoot in that configuration. So you can't take your old Mossberg 500 and cut the barrel length down to 14 inches and throw a bird's head grip on there, because then that would be a short barrel shotgun, because it was originally designed to be shot from the shoulder. The reason why you see kind of every once in a while we'll come out with something kind of weird, and you're like, oh, all right, that's kind of interesting, or something completely innovative, and you go, okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's there's three people here, and they're all right around here where I work. It's me, it's John, and it's Bill, and then we also have our sales director Brian. We're the ones thinking these things up, going, I would like to own that. That'd be kind of neat if we could do that. And that Shockwave was I'll give full credit to Bill. He was looking at this and going, well, wait a minute. I mean, there was some you'd seen small like boutique gunsmiths that were creating stuff like that, and you're like, well, that can't be right. And he dug into it for months and learned the ins and the outs, and then we our general counsel, who's since moved on to greener pastures. He much greener pastures. He got in contact with the ATF and worked with them, and they came back and sent us a letter and said, "Yeah, it's a firearm." So that's where the Shockwave came from, and it was one of these things that we look at, and it's so simple. It's literally something that has been in our line since the 1960s, that we, just by making a couple changes to the platform, we were able to then sell a lot of them to the marketplace. It was something. It filled a hole. And, I look at Shockwave, and by the way, I did own one before I came to work here. I never really did anything with it other than show my friends. But it's one of those neat things that it's under the back seat in my truck. It's out there right now. That if you ever need something, it's small enough that you can just pack it away, and you're not going to have to deal with big gun cases or anything like that.
We've had a really good time shooting these on the range. Walk me through your experience so far.
All guns, all the time.
A pistol's only as good as the trigger. This has a good one. You can't learn everything you need to know at the gun counter with one rack of the slide or one pull of an unloaded firearm. You got to do the slap.
If you're interested in firearms, don't miss this one.
Guns and Ammo TV. Watch now on Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel, or My Outdoor TV.
Rich, I like to go to gun stores, and I like to ask, the guys in the shop, hey, what's selling right now? Like, what are people interested in? And, using your words, right, guns that are kind of weird, as you called them, that seems to be what's moving right now. I think a lot of people, they've got a bolt gun, they've got their AR, they've got a 9mm striker fired pistol, and they're looking for something that's like, okay, that's interesting. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. That's kind of weird. I want it though, and there's a niche, and I think you like Shockwave and the Aftershock slides right into that gap perfectly.
But for us, getting back to what I was saying a couple seconds ago, we're building them for us, and we hope that everyone else is going to like it. But at the end of the day, we're making it so we can get we can get it ourselves. So like what was we had a cruiser, which was the 18 and a half inch barreled pistol grip shotgun, and it had the chainsaw with the chainsaw grip on it.
Yeah, the door breacher.
Yeah, that was somebody here going, I'd like that. We should let's try it out and see what happens. And it's one of those things that for a while it took off back during the zombie craze. That was a big seller. But look at, I mean, there's also times that we'll come out with something that might be my idea, like, oh, this would be really great, and it doesn't do very well.
Well, Rich, if I could ask you, backtrack a little bit. You were talking about, okay, it's a firearm. It's technically not a shotgun. Question. You were talking about short-barreled shotguns a little bit there. Let me ask you a question of that nature. Exciting news for those that don't know: the $200 tax stamp for National Firearms Act items has been repealed. That goes into effect January 1st of 26. Let's say I wanted to throw a stock on the Aftershock, like what would that process look like? Could I try to register this as a short barreled shotgun if I want, and like, what would that process look like? And, do you have any recommendations on the best way to go about doing that?
Oh, well, I would say just talk to your local gun shop. I mean, they'll help you with the forms. But yeah, you just need to fill out the forms with the ATF and get your tax stamp, and then you're good to go.
And it doesn't take stocks meant for the 930 or 940. It takes most stocks, including the Magpul, meant for the 590, for the Mossberg 590.
That's correct. Yeah. So any of the legacy, either Mossberg or aftermarket 500 and 590 stocks will most likely work. There's a couple out there that you might have to do some modification yourself with the just removing a little bit of material from the stock so it fits on that trigger group. But for the most part, most of them fit.
Jim, you reviewed it for us in Guns and Ammo in the article Mechanical Resonance. Can you tell us a little bit about the important features, details, takeaways, and what was it like to shoot it at the range?
Okay, well, first, most importantly, it's fun. I think if you're going to go to an encyclopedia and look up the phrase, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I want one, number one on the list is the Mossberg Shockwave, and number two is going to be the Aftershock, because probably since the very first minute that the Shockwave came out, people are like, this is cool, this is great, when are you going to come out with a semi-auto version? I'm sure Rich has heard that for years. They're a lot of fun to shoot, but they're interesting because you have no stocks, so you have to the shooting them is a little bit different. When you've got the model with the laser saddle, that allows you that you don't have to bring it up to your eyes to aim, and you can have it down, maybe tucked into your chest for aiming. Normally, though, you need to bring it up so you can actually use the bead sight that comes with the gun. And I found that what works best is the standard push-pull method, and that seems to absorb the recoil. What also absorbs the recoil is the fact that it's a semi-auto and not a pump. The Mossberg put that strap on the grip of the Shockwave for a reason, because that thing really likes to jump around in your hand. On the Aftershock, because it's a semi-auto, you've got that gas system soaking up some of the recoil, and then also they put in the new, I believe the grip is called the Aftershock as well on that gun. And it's polymer, but it's got a piece of soft rubber on the top of it to help absorb recoil as well. And so as a result, it's noticeably easier to shoot than the pump action Shockwave. As it is with any other shotgun, even though this is not a shotgun, but you're firing shot shells, the lighter birdshot stuff is a lot easier to control than standard buckshot or slugs. But I know a lot of people really like the Shockwave and the Aftershock, that platform, because it's so small and compact. And, Rich said he had one in his vehicle. I know a lot of people have bought them thinking that they'd employ it for home defense, just because it's so handy and convenient, and you're not sticking your muzzle around doors before you're there.
Yeah. Well, and with that said, for home defense, would you configure it with one of the Crimson Trace laser saddles? And
Honestly, probably just because it makes it so much easier and quicker to aim, and it's sort of like the no brainer laser sight on that. And the thing is, people forget, if you don't have a lot of experience around shotguns and your main experience is watching movies, whatever you're learning in movies is wrong. The shot pattern does not expand to the size of a bowling ball or a basketball as soon as it leaves the muzzle. Even at indoor distances, chances are that that pattern's not going to be much larger than a fist, which means you actually have to aim the gun. You can't just use hope as an aiming process. So that laser really helps with that, and it's you don't really have to think about it because it comes from, you can get there's three versions of the Aftershock: the 14 and 3/4 inch version without the laser, the 14 and 3/4 inch version with the laser, and then version with, I believe it's an 18.5 inch barrel. And I'm guessing they offer that just to make it legal in certain jurisdictions that have maybe an overall length restriction.
Yeah, a barrel length restriction in most cases.
Rich, that's a great question right there. What are the considerations? Are there a lot of jurisdictions that have to be considerate before purchasing the Aftershock or a Shockwave, or is this pretty universally accepted in all 50 states?
It's not, definitely not in all 50 states. I can tell you, like, New York is one of them. I think Massachusetts is another. Uh, it really depends. I mean, that's one thing that, if someone were to go and purchase one of these items, I would just go talk to your local gun shop to see if they have it in stock. Which, we're building tons of these things a week as far as the Aftershock's concerned, and they're flying off the shelves. So see if they have it, but also see if they can have it. You don't want to get in a situation where you buy something from a online retailer and then find out they can't ship it to your FFL.
How has the Aftershock impacted the sales of the original Shockwave? Has it brought awareness back to it, or
So, all right. So, we're currently in a down market right now as far as the firearms industry is concerned. So it's hard to say. I mean, everything's pretty much down. I mean, Aftershock, I mean, it is a new product. It was released in April of this year. Has been selling incredibly well. Again, new product, but also, I mean, I think you have people that were that bought the Shockwave, originally, and then said, "I really wish this was semi-automatic," and it took us a little while to get there, but now that we have one, I have a feeling that a lot of the same customers that did purchase the Shockwave are now purchasing the Aftershock.
Let me jump in there because you mentioned that it took you a while to get there. One of the things that I'm aware that you had to do was you had to rework the gas system in there, because in the 930 and the 940 you've got some of the reciprocating parts inside the stock. Well, this gun has no stock, and also, even though it's a gas-operated semi-auto, the fact that it is not firmly pressed against somebody's shoulder also affects the recoil impulse as well. So I know you had to move all the moving parts up into the receiver or under the fore end, but didn't you also have to adjust gas port size and stuff like that to make sure?
Yeah, it is. So, like I mentioned earlier, we're making guns for us, right? And I know that if I buy something and they say, "Oh, you can only use these three types of ammunition in it," well, I'm probably not going to do that. I'm going to use anything to get my hands on. So, for that reason, I mean, one of the only reasons is that we had to make sure that this gun would run with everything. So that included a lot of fine tuning with the gas hole sizes, but also with the operating system itself. And it was one of these things that we looked at the year after Shockwave came out. We're like, all right, we're doing this one for next year, and it took 7 years to get it done. But yeah, also you also have to, when you're testing these things, you have to test them with, not only ammo types but people types. I've put on some pounds as I've gotten older. It's much easier for me it would have been much easier for me to shoot that gun tuned one way versus the 120-pound person working down the hall.
The correct, it's not that you've put on weight, it's you are a more stable weapons platform.
Thank you, Jim. That's right.
Let me also bring in a little bit about the shootability of it. So, Jim, I've seen your pictures in this issue, this October issue here, and I've seen you shoot it from the hip. I've seen you shoot it almost in front of your face. But you got to be careful about presenting it in front of your face, because you don't necessarily want to punch yourself or give yourself a bloody lip.
Well, actually, I found that wasn't that much of a problem, because the gun doesn't want to come back. It just wants to jump up. And then also, because of the angle of the grip, it's not like a traditional pistol grip where you can like basically bring it right here. Like the original Mossberg I had was a cruiser. I bought it as a package. It had an extended magazine, a Mossberg 500 cruiser, had an extended magazine, and it came with the stock and a pistol grip. I think a Packmer pistol grip, actually, Packmeyer. And that was almost vertical. This grip is actually on the Aftershock, it's more angled, so you have a tendency to want to hold it a little further out in front of your face. And then when you do pull the trigger, it's not going back like you might expect, like on a traditional handgun. The gun just goes up a little bit, but still, yeah, you shouldn't have any part of the grip touching your face when you're touching off rounds. But it's not so much a danger to your dental work as you might expect.
How about, I noticed the top strap of the receiver is still drilled and tapped, so you can attach a rail, and theoretically you can attach, an optic to it. It's popular to put on a lightweight red dot sight. Would you suggest or recommend that as an option, or is this a better handling shotgun at the range without an optic on?
Well, all shotguns work well close range, just because you can look just down the gun, down the barrel of the gun, use the barrel of the gun as a crude sight. I have not, I was a late adopter to red dots on shotguns, and now all of my personal shotguns have red dots on them. And because also the red dot sits a little bit higher, and so the Aftershock sits down a little bit lower when you're running the red dot, I'm in favor of red dots on this, just because they are quicker and they seem to work, and it allows for a little bit more, I don't know, faster shooting, more instinctive shooting. Because I love, if you're going to run just standard iron sights on a shotgun for defensive use, my preferred sighting system is what they have on the Aftershock, which is just a simple red fiber optic on the front of the gun. That's basically your red dot. But if you're going to run an actual battery powered optic, I think this is a great choice for it. Unless, of course, that's more money, and you don't necessarily need that if you buy the version that's got the Crimson Trace on it, because that's your red dot right there. The red dot's on the target, and I guess it depends on personal preference. It all works, and the benefit of all of them is, at the end of the day, if you're using it for defensive purposes, you're firing a 12 gauge shotgun shell, whether that's buckshot or a slug. It all works. Basically, when it comes to terminal performance, everything else is compared to the 12 gauge, 9 or 8 pellet load, a double-aught buck. Everything else is an also ran compared to the terminal performance of that at the ranges that it's effective, which is, indoor ranges, which is what you'd be using the Aftershock for. You can't really do any better than that for terminal performance.
Jack, you want to offer any insight? You've got a lot of experience on the shotgun, as well as with some optics.
My question, Jim, as you mentioned terminal performance, and Rich, you talk about customer feedback. Has anybody been asking for a 20 gauge semi-auto yet? What that's interesting. When we're considering recoil impulse, the 20 gauge at indoor distances with a slug. I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs as far as like effectiveness for defensive situations here. And so my question, Rich, is what are the odds we might see a 20 gauge aftershock in the semi-auto in the near future or long-term future?
Well, it's funny. Whenever we introduce something new, you always have feedback where someone might say, "Oh, that's great, but if it had this, that's when I would buy it." So in this case, 12 gauge. Oh, if you had it in 16 gauge. Oh, that's when I would buy it. Like, oh, okay. I would say that, looking down the road, maybe. At this point in time, though, it's one of those things that is it's not at the top of our roadmap that where anyone would see that, and I'd say the next few years.
Because there is a 20 gauge Shockwave.
Yes. Right. Now, those were very relatively easy for us to introduce, only because we had the 590 and 20 gauge. So we were able to say, all right, well, just cut it down and put on a smaller grip, and we're good to go. Whereas this is it took us years of development to get to this point with the operating.
It's a brand, like, to Jim's point, it is a complete redesign of the action. And so I recognize it's no small feat, but boy, as far as like shootability, 20 gauge semi-auto, handheld the way that the Aftershock was designed, that could be even more practical, as for close range defensive distances.
Yeah. And look, we've asked the question, of course, with our engineers and say, hey, let's do this. Can we do this? And the feedback that we've gotten is there's a lot of developmental work that will go into this, only because of the amount of payload that is in that 20 gauge, and can that run that action every single time with every type of ammo on every type of body type. So it's just one of those things that, if we were to do it, it would just take a little while to get there.
That brings me to a question, and you learned a lot of things, basically switching over, reinventing the gas system for the 990. Are any of the new parts or port sizes or anything like that you developed for the 990 eventually going to make their way back to the 940 in future years?
Probably not. I don't see us having a need at this point to have a SBS 940, right? When we already have that on the 990. So as far as gas hole sizes, I mean, going with a shorter barrel length, it's typically when you'd want to really have to tweak those to be able to run something on a shorter barrel length, or run certain types of ammo on a shorter barrel length. But it's that design is we used to have going back many years, auto-loading shotguns that were on a very similar type of operating platform. All right, with a similar design of gas system. So it was really just kind of taking that design and then working to refine it and get it to a point where it can be used in that type of configuration. But I don't think that, I mean, there are things that we've learned. I mean, always that whether it's from engineering or from consumer events or from even our friends over at Guns and Ammo, that we take back and future engineer our products.
Not to belabor this, but I've got one other request on behalf of Guns and Ammo. Last one. How about a magazine-fed version?
Oh, magazine-fed 20 gauge.
Oh, Jesus.
Come on. Well, I'll be happy with the 12.
It's something that we're looking at. It's very difficult to get so not only do you have to power that bolt, but then you also have to strip a round out of the magazine. And certain types of ammo work great with it. Some don't, and we just need to make sure it works with everything. So it's not something that I would think we're going to see in the very near future. Definitely not in 20 gauge.
I had to ask. Hey, thank you, Rich, for joining us today. And entertaining our crazy ideas, and I appreciate all the little bit of the history and the education you provided us. And Jim, thanks for reviewing the 990 in Guns and Ammo. So,
well, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
all right, guys, we'll do it again. Until next time.
All right, boys, thanks.